Hey everybody, welcome back to this tutorial where we draw this face realistically in Adobe Illustrator. My name is DiMattei, and I left off finalizing my eye layer 2 right here. So this is what I finished on the last episode if you're just tuning in now for the second part of the eye. For whatever reason, part 2, not part 1. But this is what my mesh looks like in outline mode right now. And I have multiple layers. I have this as a layer, and I also have a nose as a layer. And if I hide those, that's my original layer. So let me go out of outline mode, and I'll show you what it looks like currently. Other than that, what we want to do is, on the last episode at the end, I made a new layer for my my next eye. Not really next eye, but next part of the eye. So I'm going to be filling in this ghost area right here, and I'm going to be doing the actual eye itself, and as well her eyelashes and just that piece. So I'll show you what that is under these layers. So we're going to be tackling one of the most important pieces of the face to make it look real, the eyes. The eyes are what's going to make this drawing stand out and make it look real. So we have to make sure we're paying attention to very close detail and what makes this eye look like this, and how can we make it more lifelike, because eyes are, they're moist, they have water, they are very clear. Skin is a different texture than eye, so we got to make sure we kind of do that justice. So we have to pay attention. But the way we're going to start out with this again is we're going to start out with a rectangle just like always, and I'm just going to keep this layer like this just so I can double check. But going to start exactly like I did with the other piece of the eye. I advise you, if you didn't go to the other part of the tutorial, or you're just tuning in now, maybe check another video. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a point in the center, make sure the rectangle or square is white, and make sure it is a rectangle or square, nothing else. And then now that I have a center point when the object is all white, now I'm going to hit outline mode on this. So now I can see what I'm doing. So I'm actually, I'm going to hide this just so I can visualize right now what I have to do, because it's kind of hard to see with that. So I'm just going to change this color so I know where my points are, because it's kind of hard to see with gray. Maybe we could do, I don't know, sure, light red. So now what I have to do is I'm going to take these points and I'm going to start boxing in my shape. And I want to keep my center point at my center. I'm going to go all across the center of the eye to the other side. So this point should be about right here. And these points are going to be pretty much the same kind of style for every drawing you do. But the thing is, we also want to be conscious of our layers that we've created for ourselves during the process. So we want to make sure we are boxing in what we need to. So I need to fill in this area right here around her eye. So by doing that, I need to create a boundary within that so I can line up the edges and the color edge right here. I just want to see something. I might have to fix this area right over here in a bit, but let's do that a little later. It's a little too dark. It's kind of just like a dark spot. It should be a little bit more. So I'm talking about this part right here. Maybe not. I mean, maybe just a little brighter. Actually, I could probably do that right now. I think it's just this point. I think it's fine. It's going to get mostly covered by eyelash in this layer, so let's just keep going. So I'm just going to keep finalizing this boundary shape. Let me just check. Yeah, it goes about to about the bottom of that black tone on the eyelashes. And I'm not worrying about my actual eyelashes right now, because these things are going to be sitting on top of this layer. It's going to be a separate shape. I might just draw them just straight up pen tool and make them vector, because they're going to be so small that we could make them very thin and sharp lines. As non-gradient, I mean, we don't have to necessarily make a gradient mesh. We could feather it if we need to on the effects, but I don't even think we're going to need to feather it. I think if we just draw it straight up with our pen tool, it'll look fine. Other than that, just going to keep moving my points along here. And you're kind of getting the idea as to what we're doing. We are boxing in where our boundary is. We want to make sure we know where our lines are, where our harsh color changes are, and our shapes. We want to acknowledge shapes within the face. Everything is made up of shapes. If we're not looking for shapes or looking for ways to identify the face and break it down, then you're gonna have a hard time basically doing this project. You need to be able to see in general where lines and color and light really change on the face. And this is where understanding fine art really comes in handy. Not that you need to necessarily know how to draw realistically in fine art or know fine art as a whole aspect, but in a sense this is also fine art because it's kind of you are realistically drawing. You have to, you know, find everything within the face. You need to understand what makes the face to really get this point across, this project to look nice. Alright, so now that we have our boundary, let's just check it and line it up with our current existing layer that we've created for ourselves. So it's not quite perfect yet. I do need to add a few more points to get this shape, see how it bends in. That's really the way it should be. It kind of bends in a little bit, but I need a little bit more points, some more points, because I'm going to be shaping everything. I'm going to have to put lines all over the place. And what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to make this the actual eyeball and iris and pupil a separate layer. I don't know if I'm going to make it a separate layer. You know, I probably won't make it a separate layer for this white, and you know, the pink in here and the gray, that's all going to be this main layer. But when it comes to the actual sphere and circle of the eye, we can make that separately and do that as a separate layer. It probably look better that way. So on that note, we're going to continue. I'm going to start adding lines where we need to. So the first line that I see, or the first line I think is the easiest to get done and start establishing our shape of our mesh here, is right here. So on this boundary, you could see that we have this black kind of frame of the eye. And already off the bat, I know that we have to do some moving some points around, because the way the color flows right now over here is just not quite good enough for me. So I might have to move these points all the way over here just to get the color to flow a little bit more longer across this shape. Because again, we have to understand what gradient mesh is doing. Gradient mesh is moving color from one point to another in all directions. So I don't want my black line to fall off over here. I want it to extend, because that's what it looks like. There's a shadow completely under her eye where her eyelashes are. I need that shadow under the eyelashes for later. And I might even need to move this midpoint. This midpoint might even change, but we'll see what happens. So I need to add a point right here because I need to move points up here, and I have nothing. So I'm going to do that right there. And now I can move this midpoint down here. The goal is to add points only where you need to. We don't want to just add points and then move them. We want to be looking at the mesh, understanding our next step and our next point that we think we need to make to get this structure to look the way we're trying to perceive it. So you can see now that this line is doing a much better job following its natural path. And this line actually is going to need to follow the top part of the eye right here. This line. See this line right here? This is going to be this point. So we have to move this guy over. And notice how I haven't moved the midpoint yet. This caret helps out a lot if you don't use it, because you can't, sometimes when you're moving the curves, if you use the direct selection and move this, sometimes it will move both sides. So the caret will actually eliminate that from happening, which is really helpful and really the purpose. Plus it also converts non-curves to curves. So if you ever make a corner point, you can always just convert it to a curve. So I'm going to keep going across the inner line that I've started working on the eye. I'm going to add a point over here so I can move this guy up. And I'm moving these points to the right now because I want this line to see how this line is going so far that way. Really don't need it to do that. I just want it to be a little bit more linear and closer to the point that it's branching off to at the moment. So I'm going to use this marker as this crossing point from this shadow, from this shape to this shape. This point is going to be right in the middle like that. And it's following this bend, this consistent bend. It's almost natural. So this guy's going to move over. So now I just messed up the curves, and let me just fix it up. Alright, so I think that's looking pretty good. I'm going to shift this bad boy up here. And then I'm going to move this guy to do that shape that I was talking about and keep that curvature of the eye. Alright, so now that we have that line down, let's add another line. Let's keep working down our checklist of points. So I do need one. I want to get this shadow right here, this indent of the eye. I feel like that's a really important shadow that we need to get. So I think there's a line right here. See this kind of shade? I'm going to put a point at the edge of that line, and this is going to be my center point to that. And again, I'm going to keep my center point right over here. I'm not going to move it. The center point line is still running through the center. See, now this point doesn't really make sense anymore. This point has to go right here. It has to follow this path. Same with this guy up here. Got to make sure it just gives that natural bend, follows the line of the shadow. And you can see we're starting to shape certain color and box certain color in. So I need a point here because we have a point here at the corner. I need a point here at this corner. So that's going to help me start boxing the shape even more. Let me check over here. That looks good for now. I'm not going to worry too much on this side. I'm kind of working over here first, and then I can go fix later. So let me just do a quick correction to this line here. All right, so I'm just missing points on the back wall here on this roundabout, this little crescent moon line. So let me get the gradient mesh tool. So now I can take this guy, move it over a little bit, and now I can cut that shape. And we're staying consistent. We have corner, corner, and then we have midpoint going through, and then we have one point in between the corner and the midpoint, and then another point in between the corner and the midpoint. So we don't want to have too many extra lines. We want to be as symmetrical as possible, especially with this kind of drawing. So at final, I'm going to add a point right in the middle because this is going to be the point that's going to source the color of the shadow and branch it out to the edges. And those edges are going to branch out and shade into this color and these shades that we're going to be adding later. So that's what's going to create that divide between this color and this chunk of brown, this dark brown. And this color is, this point right here is going to be the true identifier of the box that we've created. So the idea is we want to box in the color, and then we need to create a point inside there to source that color. And even in some cases, like before, if you watch previous episodes, if we want to get even finer, I could even box this whole shape in again around it, just like around it like this, and then that would even create an even finer transition between this color and then right here. Because that's now what you would have a point right here as a demo, right? You would select here and here, and you would have points with this lighter peach color right next to this brown, and that's basically going to create that even finer divide. But we're just getting really ahead of what we're doing. We're just talking technique now. But nonetheless, I feel like that could be helpful. Let's move on. So I realize there's a problem right here. We have a point going inside of the mesh from the outside. Can't really have that, so we got to just make sure our curves are doing normal things. Let me separate those points a little bit. They're getting a little crammed. Notice how I follow that bend. Alright, so I think that's pretty solid shaping for over there. I'm going to add one point here to split this light peach and dark tan spot over, and this is going to be my middle source point. And you don't have to necessarily draw like I am. This is just a way to get my idea across of how you may want to work the mesh, because these shapes that I'm drawing may not be the shapes that you want to show or draw, or you might want to just draw in your own style entirely, but you're interested in learning how you can apply the mesh tool to this style that you're wanting, that you're intending to draw. So regardless of you trying to follow me exactly or trying to get the idea, I feel like this skill can become very handy in original content. So I feel like I'm going to leave that area. I think that's pretty solid right now. I do need a point now in the middle of this brown eye socket, because we have, before we even do that, I will do that in a second, but I'm going to define this bottom line of that eye socket before I even go further. So this point actually, as you can see, it rides the top of this line that right here, this line that goes across from all the way at the bottom of this brown to here. So this point actually needs to move up, and so does this point. And you can see how now it's starting to make more sense, and things are kind of just naturally coming together, because if you have the mesh done right, it will pretty much just make itself, with the exception of some tweaking. Alright, you see that? So now I'm going to add the point I was just talking about right in the middle to source that brown. And this one I'm going to move down, this one I'm going to move a little down. Then I'm going to take this, fix this little curve. I think that's fine, I can leave that. Maybe I can open this up just to give it some breathing room. Just give it a little tweakage. And I also think these points can come out. Just give it a little bit more extension, and just fills up a little bit more space, divide the space up a little bit more evenly. And now we just want to make sure we're not messing with our curves too much. We want to fix what we just did. Alright, so we're going to just quickly edit this, make sure this rides the center of that color bound that we have now created for ourselves. And you can see here without the caret, it's moving both sides of that line right here. So if I use the caret, won't do that. Alright, so that's looking pretty good so far. Definitely coming together. See how it kind of fits right in? That's what we want. Okay, so what are we missing? We kind of have a top, middle, bottom right there. I'm going to work on these shapes over here. This is important. This is good shape and color to the eye. It's that inside of the eye part that I don't know what it's called, but we need it. So we're going to put, really all we need to do to achieve it right now is, well, the first thing I want to do personally is I want to make sure I do not lose this shadow. So this point has to stay. And then what I'm going to do, since I have this shape kind of already boxed in, all I have to do, because I've done all the work already, place a point right in the middle. So now we have this shadow. I'm going to select probably this mid pink color, and then this color, I'll probably select this, peach orange color, and then we'll have a nice blend, and it will be boxed in, and therefore we will create that shape in our mesh. Same thing with this. I actually do need a line for this shape on the left boundary right here. So you can see how we need to follow that shape line. So you can see how we need to follow that shape line. We also want to make sure that our lines are following a natural trend, natural bend always. Don't want to be too extreme. Want to make sure everything's kind of straight and sound. Okay, always be editing as you're working. If you're moving points, making sure your Bezier curves are being normal, it's going to make your mesh a lot easier to work with. That's looking pretty good. So now I think I just need another point in the middle to source that color. And I'll probably draw these highlight like bubbles right here with just a separate like ellipse or something shape. That's that tan color or whatever, peach or white. And that's really all I'm not going to try and include that into the mesh and like draw around it and box it in. It's too much extra detail for such a simple little shape that I don't want to really, don't need to include in the mesh. But now I think I have all my shapes on the outside boxed in, I do want to add one line and point line across this kind of shape here, this middle point, because we want to make sure we're getting this dark gray black here, and then we also want to make sure we're capturing the skin tone over here, because then we have no really detail being captured down here, nor do we have any more detail being captured inside this hollow open. So I'm going to add a point right here. So that's looking pretty much how I wanted it to. Let's see with this. These guys can move to the left a little bit. Same thing with over here. I'm going to add one more point. That's looking pretty good. And I think I do need one point right in the middle like there. So you can see what we have now. We have a good establishment of the barrier of the inside of the eye. I haven't really worked on this inside part. Not that it's going to be too hard, but I just want you to see what I've just done and where I need to basically add points to make sure I'm getting the proper color and proper shapes needed to define the eye as real. And it's going to look real after after we fill in the color, after we make our blending edits, and after we make our color edits. It's going to look really good. And also these highlights are very important on the eyes to give it that watery look. But other than that, we're going to continue moving forward by blending. I'm sorry, not blending, by adding points inside this part of the eye. So the first really most important thing I see on this eye, other than a solid gray shape and maybe a little orange down here and this white, is the separation of white and gray. I think that's very important to the way the eye is perceived in this drawing. Same thing with this kind of line here on this eye, this kind of tone change. I think that's also very important to the image. But other than that, we're going to stick with this eye, and I'm going to start by adding a point right on the boundary of that shadow. So we're going to keep shaping the shapes that we want to define. I see color I want to present in my image. I make lines that define that shape, and that's what's going to give it that look. It's going to give it it's going to make it stand out. You know, you're going to do exactly what you're looking to do if your mesh lines are correct. Alright, so I think that looks pretty good. I just want to make sure you're correcting these lines, making sure you're following the right boundary. I think this is a little off right here. That's about right now. Okay. You know what? I might have to move. Let's see. I definitely want to add a point. Oh, I hit the perspective grid. I hate this grid. You can only cancel it with the actual tool selected for whatever reason. It's awful. Anyway, I'm going to add a point right here because I feel like there's this natural bend that's happening right here that I have no way to really get to unless I add another point. I can't really move this one up. Nor do I want to. I want to keep that one where it is. And I feel like now I need to move these points back over here. And now I need to add a point right here, and so I can put that one there. So now I can create this wall. So now I'm creating the wall. Let's see what I'm doing. I'm not going to worry too much about how straight and curvy this is because I'm going to cover this, basically this line area over here with the actual pupil in the eye. So just remember that this shape is going to be separate and on top of this. And then we're going to mask it within the eye, so it looks like it's under the eyelid, because we don't obviously want it to look silly. Alright, so it's starting to look pretty good. So now we can add, now that we have the box around this entire shadow, we can add points in the middle to identify the color like before. So now when we select points like here or here or here, that's gonna define the color inside this gray blob to shoot the gray color out to these edge points, and then these edge points will be able to basically box in that color. And that's really what I'm looking to do across this whole eye. So now I have this part almost boxed in. We're getting there. Gonna add a point right in the middle to define that white. Perfect. Don't have to do anything. Now let's move over to this final area to the left of the eye, and then we could start adding color. It's pretty much done. So I'm gonna add, to start, a line right here because I need to define this shape. This line has to move all the way over here, and now I gotta compress this because I need that gray color to travel all the way to this corner. I'm gonna actually move this guy to the right, to the left, I mean, a little bit, just to give it a little bit more symmetry to this one, this side, because this one's pretty close, and the color really does move this far, but it gets really tight in this crevice. You can see the kind of the white cones into this and funnels into the bottom of the eye right here. I don't like how this isn't really straight with that, so I'm going to move these guys up a little bit. Not that these points that I'm moving really matter too much, again, they're going to be covered. But I still want to be conscious of how the color flows across from right to left. So I think a few more points should do it. I do need one right in the middle of this gray blob to define the gray. I can leave these points for now. It's not really going to make too much of a difference. I'll probably mass color all these points to one shade. And then I'm going to want to define the edge point of this gray to this orange peach here. So I think it starts right there. And I honestly think that curve is just fine for what we're looking for. I'm going to add one more point right in the dark spot, right there. And then I'm going to add a point right where it kind of ends on the eye, just like kind of over here. I need that identification of this shape, this end of the eye. But the only problem is now I just gotta move this guy in because this corner kind of ends right over here. Just gotta fix up my curves. And then lastly, just one more point inside this shape. And that's gonna basically, I think, finish off this eye, as long as I don't have to make more corrections. Such as whatever happened here. Can't really see what is happening. Alright, so after a little bit of tweaking, I think we have our mesh. So we can see that we have color being defined in there. And we have color defining all inside of this part of the eye, and we're keeping it primarily smooth because, you know, the eye is pretty smooth. You know, we don't want to add too many points where the actual eye is, because we don't really need that much detail in, you know, two shades realistically, white and gray, and then two shades here like gray and a peach. Like, we don't need too many dots. We just want to make sure we can see the change in color where the change in color is supposed to be happening. You know, to a close degree. It does not have to be perfect by any means. But I think this resemblance, this mesh right here, is a pretty good place to start adding color. So I'm just gonna give it a quick save. And I think I'm just gonna end the episode here before we start adding color to the eye layer 1. The eye layer that is above, I'm gonna sit above this layer. And then once we finish this color, we can go into drawing the more detailed part of the eye. We can add the eyelashes and we can blend this shape to the actual skin behind it. But other than that, thank you for watching this far. Hopefully, if you're just watching now, thank you for getting through this episode. If you've been sticking around since episode 1, keep going. I know it's a long process, but you're only going to learn from sitting here and putting hours into this process. Please subscribe, like, comment, whatever you want to do on my channel. If you don't like it, please let me know and let me know why. I know I'm not necessarily, you know, the best speaker, but I think accompanied by my screen capture here, I think you can get over it because we are learning some severe stuff. I'll see you on the next one, guys. That is episode 19 coming for you.